About 1 month ago, I uploaded a video of this, my Ideapad 100S made by Lenovo. This laptop was only $150, brand spanking new when I purchased it from Best Buy, and I was actually quite intrigued by what I was getting for the price. But I did an initial blog, I guess, a few days after I purchased the laptop when I was stuck with nothing but this laptop to upload all of my videos on for that week. And it was tough. I had to use Movie Maker to edit all of my footage. I couldn't use Adobe Premiere because I wasn't running Windows 64-bit, I was running Windows 32-bit, and apparently you can't run Premiere on 32-bit Windows. I also couldn't do very much at all in Adobe Photoshop. Now I know I didn't have samples of that, I didn't show you actual footage of me trying to do things in Photoshop. But I basically didn't have enough RAM to edit large chunks of data in a file, so I couldn't change tons of pixels at one time. So if I made my brush really big and then tried to do something like paint over an entire section of a picture, it would tell me that I didn't have enough RAM in my computer to complete the tasks. What a letdown. But apart from that and some pretty fun TNT detonations, which resulted in a lot of lag I might add, I really didn't go into much more detail about the internal hardware of this machine here. So in this deconstruction video, if you haven't seen the original deconstruction video of the PlayStation, click the video above me. It's an older video, but I think it's fairly well put together for what I had at the time. We're going to deconstruct this $150 laptop and find out what makes this thing tick. Should be fairly interesting. 150 bucks? Shouldn't expect too much, right? Let's find out if that theory holds up. Well folks, this is it. This here is the motherboard. It's nothing special by any means and is much smaller than I anticipated. Typical laptop motherboards span the entire length of the chassis for obvious reasons, but this one doesn't need to. There's plenty of space for all of your goodies, as well as what's underneath here, and as you can see in the middle, that reflective chip, there's your quad-core Intel Atom processor. Again, very low power, very weak chip, but nonetheless a true quad-core, which is nice to see. The RAM is literally soldered to the board itself, tucked away nice and neatly underneath this large copper heat spreader. It's pretty crazy they managed to fit all of this onto such a small board, but this thing actually comes in even smaller variants, and I'll discuss that later on. The die on this chip is not very large, which makes sense. I mean, it's not a very powerful processor, and it isn't very far away from external inputs and outputs, which is a bit odd. I'd imagine it's probably not the best idea to place a high-speed HDMI output 2 inches away from a CPU, but I'm not a PCB specialist. Again, the RAM is somewhere under here, making it practically impossible to upgrade or remove, unfortunately. The two USB 2.0 headers have their own dedicated PCB in this 100S, which I guess ties into the fact that the motherboard isn't very big and therefore won't reach the opposite side of the chassis on its own. This board connects to the main board via a thin ribbon cable that runs underneath the large battery for this device. The speakers are nothing special, like at all. I have a soundbite of a YouTube video of mine being played from this laptop recorded with a Blue Yeti microphone. If you're interested in hearing that, go ahead and click the card on the top right hand side of your screen. Nonetheless, they're very trebly and not very clear. Another tiny circuit board from the front of the laptop is dedicated to the touchpad and the left and right clicks below. It acts as a sort of intermediate between the actual touchpad logic board beneath and the click buttons that you find below that. You can also see both buttons labeled as left and right respectively here on the board. It's pretty cool that they actually take their time to label all of these. The battery is an entirely different beast, and I call it that because, well, it's huge. Practically the size of my hand. I didn't take note of its milliamp hour rating. It's not even listed on Lenovo's own dedicated website, but it'll last you a very, very long time, and you can take that to the bank. Here's the screen, nothing exciting to see here. I didn't want to take its back panel off simply because there wouldn't be much to see really at all, but I do want to point out the reinforced metal swivel mounts below on the left and right hand sides. These typically become very weak on old laptops after just a few years of use, being opened and closed so many times, so it's nice to see some attention was given to the durability of the swivel, especially in such a cheap laptop. The large black cable poking out of the screen is of course for the LCD, but also for the tiny camera up top. The bottom panel is made of plastic and is rather unexciting, save the blue sheet of what appears to be aluminum. That's at least what it feels like. I know I say that about practically every metal I come into contact with, but the job of this one is obviously to disperse heat away from the motherboard above it. This logic board here is dedicated to the touchpad, which I mentioned earlier. I unfortunately was not able to remove it from the laptop. I even ended up chipping a piece of plastic off trying to pry it up, so it'll just stay there. So now let's reassemble everything. Let's pretend we're building a laptop. This will be fun. So that's it. That's what goes into one of these thin profile laptops for $150. Now, I used to think that the thin profile was very cool and a very big technical feat, but after finding out that the motherboard is literally no bigger than some phones nowadays, it's really not all that impressive. I should also note that this laptop actually comes in a USB drive variant. Like, you can literally buy this computer on a USB stick that's like that big. You basically plug it into the back of any TV and voila, you have that laptop right there. Now that laptop has to have a keyboard, right? You don't want to be typing on a really small keyboard. So they make up for the rest of the space with a very large battery, which is why this thing gets around 8 to 9 hours of pretty heavy use without draining. In fact, I've gone 3 or 4 days of light use in and out of classes and haven't had to charge it once over the course of those 3 or 4 days. So battery life is amazing. But that's as far as it goes for the most part. So if you're looking for something that's super high tech and high end, this is obviously not the way to go. Hence the $150 price tag. But for notes and for very light editing, I did manage to post a few videos with it, editing just on that thing. It's not advisable, but it is possible. But with those light document editing scenarios and surfing the web and things like that, the laptop's going to be just fine for you. So sorry that Vlog 2 took so long, but I wanted to get this one out there. I had to label the first video Vlog 1, and that was kind of where it stopped. It was like, okay, where's Vlog 2? Well, here it is. Sorry it's so late, but I do recommend this laptop to any college student on a budget, to anybody who's just looking to travel lightly and do some light web browsing, YouTube watching, document editing, things like that. You're not going to have enough RAM to do anything else. The RAM is soldered to the motherboard, so you cannot, add any more. And that's pretty much the extent to that. So with that, I want to hear what you think about this laptop, your final conclusions, being that you've now seen 3 videos of me covering this particular laptop. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you think it deserves one, give it a thumbs down if you think it doesn't, and click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Do not be shy, folks. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.